Heartwarming twist, Maid's incredible offer to save Billionaire's daughter after 3 months reveal. In the small suburban town of Maplewood, a tale of unimaginable sacrifice was set to unfold. Jane, a 34-year-old single mother, hustled every day to provide a decent life for her 2 children, Mia and Ethan. Waking before dawn, she scrubbed and polished the luxurious home of the Harringtons, a wealthy family whose fortunes seemed as boundless as their indifference to the world outside their gated community. One evening, as the rich aroma of roasted chicken wafted through the kitchen, Jane wiped her hands on her apron while overhearing a conversation that pierced through the lively clinks of silverware. The Harringtons were frantic. News had just arrived that their daughter, Sophie, only 16, had a rare and life-threatening illness. Jane felt her heart lurch. The pain of expensive medical bills would be a crushing weight on them, just as it was for families like hers who scraped by on budgets. She just tidied up their plates, but the glimpses of their anguish struck a deep chord in her. Sophie often sat by the window, sketching the landscapes of their town, her artistic passion a fleeting glimpse of life outside her illness. In her brief moments of clarity, shared giggles transformed their relationship. Jane found an unexpected connection in their creative spirits, united by art and dreams. But below that glimmer of hope ran a current of bitterness. How was it that a girl like Sophie could face such a trial, while her family had the resources to shield her from the brutal realities of financial struggle? Jane grappled with her feelings as she caught snippets of hushed conversations about the miraculous treatment that could save Sophie, a costly cure that would only enrich already wealthy doctors. "My savings," she murmured to herself one night, an idea igniting a flame of hope mingled with reckless abandon. Could she truly sacrifice the little she had for a girl she barely knew? Love knows no bounds, she thought, and perhaps it could bridge the chasm of social class. Secretly, Jane enrolled in a screening process to find out if her blood could be the key element desperate enough to save Sophie. It was a gamble, a leap of faith from a woman who faced judgment every day for her station in life. Days passed, creeping by, and tension rippled in the air when Jane finally received the call confirming compatibility. Her blood could save Sophie's life. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The news spiraled into chaos. When Jane revealed her offer to the Harringtons, shock painted their faces. Outrage bubbled over, but buried beneath was a recognition of Jane's nobility, a mirror held to their privilege. A simmering understanding began to surface, softening the rigid barriers they had built around themselves. As the clock ticked down for Sophie, their lives intertwined more than ever. The question lingered like fog: could sacrifice redefine their boundaries? Proximity to one another demanded change, and the families stood at the edge of an emotional precipice, each grappling with their choices and identities. Would they allow compassion to prevail over their long-held prejudices, or would the barriers of wealth once again reign supreme? The air was thick with tension, the stakes impossibly high. What would happen next, only time could tell. The evening air was charged with a whirlwind of emotions as Jane stood before the Harringtons, her heart racing. The dining room was suffused with an uneasy silence, all eyes fixed on her. Mr. Harrington's brow furrowed with disbelief, while his wife's hand trembled around the wine glass, the liquid within threatening to spill as she tried to compose herself. Sophie, seated at the head of the table, looked from her parents to Jane, confusion mingled with hope in her bright blue eyes. "Are you serious?" Mr. Harrington's voice broke through the heavy silence, a mix of skepticism and panic. "You want to give us your blood? For her?" His tone was harsh, the raw disbelief coating each word. The claim felt too outrageous, too significant to accept. "Yes," Jane took a breath, her voice steady despite the torrent of nerves swirling in her stomach. "I can help. If it means saving Sophie, then yes, I'll do it." Mrs. Harrington's expression shifted, the lines of worry etched on her face beginning to soften. "But why, Jane?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "We don't even know each other that well." "Because," Jane replied, "I can't stand the thought of anyone suffering, especially a girl so full of life and dreams, like Sophie. You have the means to find treatment, but what happens when it's not enough? This way, maybe it can make a difference." The realization washed over the family like a tidal wave. Here was a woman who barely made ends meet, living in a modest world vastly different from theirs, bringing an incredible grace into the conversation. For the first time, they stood face to face with a profound moral question, one that could redefine their understanding of privilege itself. Sophie's expression shifted as she rose from her chair. "You would really do this for me?" Her eyes sparkled with a mix of gratitude and fear. "What if something goes wrong? What if it hurts you?" "I've thought about that," Jane admitted, her heart swelling with conviction. "Every life has value. No parent should have to watch their child suffer. I'm willing to take that risk." Moments stretched into what felt like hours. The weight of the decision hung in the air, heavy yet strangely liberating. Mrs. Harrington moved forward, placing a hand on Jane's shoulder. "You're an extraordinary woman," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "And I don't know how we can ever repay you." In that moment, the lines that once divided them began to blur. Jane felt a flicker of hope igniting not just for Sophie, but for all of them. Something profound was beginning to take root. A bridge was formed, delicate yet unyielding, between privilege and sacrifice, but lurking just beneath that budding connection was a fear that neither family wanted to voice. What would it mean if Jane succeeded? Or worse, what if she failed? Days would pass before they could unlock those answers. But before Jane could leave the Harringtons' house, a thought clawed at her consciousness. What if in saving Sophie, she unraveled a greater struggle of her own, a fight within the very fabric of their intertwined lives? As Jane stepped out into the cool twilight, the world seemed both brighter and darker. A whisper of uncertainty flickered in her mind, a realization that this decision would not just alter Sophie's fate but her own. Tomorrow they would face the hospital, the procedure, the unknown. Would they emerge healed, whole, or would they be shattered in ways they couldn't yet foresee? With those thoughts wrapping around her heart like a vice, Jane turned, looking back at the window illuminated in the Harrington home. There, Sophie stood, a silent sentinel of the choices they were about to make. Could they truly save each other? The answer remained elusive, but one thing was certain: their lives were about to change forever, no matter the outcome. The sun dipped low behind the horizon, casting a golden glow that warmed the chill of the evening. Jane's thoughts felt jumbled, like puzzle pieces flying wildly in a gust of wind. She walked slowly down the quiet street, her mind racing with the implications of her promise. The Harringtons had opened a door that she never expected to knock on, a door into their lives, dreams, and fears. Her own life had never been easy. Simple choices were often overshadowed by the weight of responsibility, but this sacrifice felt different. With every step, a mixture of fear and determination surged within her. What was she really getting herself into? Later that night, unable to find rest, Jane opened her laptop. The blue light flickered against her tired face as she typed "bone marrow donation" into the search bar. The words on the screen blurred together. She scanned articles, clinging to hope, looking for stories of success against the odds. Every tale of bravery and resilience seemed to mirror her own inner battle. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from the digital world. It was a text from Sophie, a simple message: "Keep fighting, Jane. You have no idea how much hope you've given us." Her heart fluttered. In that instant, Jane realized she was not just a donor, she had become a part of Sophie's story, her life. Stepping back onto her sofa, a swell of emotion rose in her throat. Maybe this wasn't just about saving a life, it was about creating connections, battling fears together, forging a bond that would stretch beyond bloodlines. The next day dawned clear and bright, yet the tension hung in the air, thicker than fog. Jane arrived at the hospital, apprehensive but resolute. A woman in scrubs led her through the sterile hallways, the scent of disinfectant stinging her senses. For a brief moment, dread crept in. What if something went wrong? What if she couldn't handle the procedure? But then, she remembered Sophie's shining eyes, the light that had sparked more within Jane than she anticipated. In the waiting area, the Harringtons were already present, their expressions a blend of optimism and worry. As Jane approached, Sophie jumped up, enveloping her in a fierce hug. "I knew you'd come. I knew it," she exclaimed, her voice full of belief. Mrs. Harrington rushed over, her eyes glistening. "We can't thank you enough, Jane. You're giving Sophie more than we could have ever dreamed of." Mr. Harrington, usually stoic, looked almost vulnerable. "This means the world to us," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. The atmosphere shifted. In that moment, no longer was Jane just a maid or an outsider. She was family, bound by shared hopes and fears. They were led into a private room where the procedure would take place. Jane's heart raced, and she drew in a deep breath as she lay upon the hospital bed. The medical team moved efficiently, prepping her for the donation. She glanced up at the ceiling, trying to quell the nerves, focusing on thoughts of Sophie. Remembering that spark in her eyes resolved the chaos in her heart into a singular purpose. As the anesthesia began to take hold, closing in on her senses in a velvet embrace, something clicked. This was more than a surgical procedure, it was a new beginning. Jane's heart leapt as she realized she was not just a participant in this moment, but a catalyst for change. When she drifted off, everything felt entwined: a mother's love, a father's hope, a daughter's dreams, and her own courage dancing through the air like whispers. She couldn't know then what lay ahead, or how this choice might unravel secrets hidden within the Harringtons' walls. All she could feel was the hope swelling in her chest as sleep pulled her into its deep embrace. But just as the darkness began to thicken, a single thought emerged: was this truly the beginning or the end of something profound? The world swirled around Jane, a whirlwind of muted noises and soft lights as she floated in and out of consciousness. The warmth of the anesthesia wrapped her like a comforting blanket, and for a moment, the weight of the decision drifted away. However, a pull, a nagging whisper, brought her back to the surface just as she felt herself slipping too deeply. When she opened her eyes again, she was surrounded by white walls, sheets, even the scrubs of the medical team. The sterile scent of the hospital returned, sharper now. Her gaze flitted around the room, taking in the monitors softly beeping beside her. They were alive, they were real, and so was she. "Jane, welcome back," a voice said gently. It was Dr. Ramirez, a calm and soothing presence. "You did wonderfully." Jane blinked a few times, trying to clear the fog in her mind. "Sophie?" The word escaped her lips before she could hold it back, a thread of longing woven into her question. "She's in recovery right now," Dr. Ramirez assured her. "We'll know more once she wakes up, but the initial signs are good." Relief flooded through Jane, warm and tangible. She couldn't shake the feeling of hope that clung to her like a second skin. Each beat of her heart seemed to echo the promise of a better tomorrow, not just for Sophie but for the entire Harrington family. Can I see her?" Jane's voice wavered, tinged with both eagerness and concern. "Not just yet. You need a moment to recover yourself." A hint of a smile played on the doctor's face, as if he understood. "But soon. I promise." The minutes crawled by, stretching into what felt like an eternity. Different nurses came in and out, checking her vitals and adjusting the four. Each time, Jane caught glimpses of the clock, counting down to the moment she would see Sophie again. Struggling against the drowsiness, she replayed their last moments together, the hope in Sophie's eyes, the bond that made this all worth it. And then, finally, after what felt like hours, the door opened again. Mrs. Harrington stepped in, her eyes wide with gratitude and worry in equal measure. "Jane, oh, thank God you're awake." Tears brimmed in her eyes. Jane reached out instinctively, grasping her hand. The warmth of her touch spoke to all the unspoken words, a simple connection that said everything. "How is she?" Jane asked, her voice softer, trembling with vulnerability. She's fighting, just like you, Mrs. Harrington replied, squeezing Jane's hand tightly. You've given us hope, you've given us a chance. You have no idea how much that means to us. Moments later, another figure appeared at the door. Mr. Harrington, his expression a mix of weariness and relief. They're moving Sophie to a recovery room now. She's stable, Jane. You did this. But as Jane absorbed their gratitude, a flash of doubt crawled in. What if it doesn't work? What if, don't think about that now. Mrs. Harrington urged. We will fight together, no matter what. As Jane sat in the oversized hospital bed, warmth blooming in her chest, she realized, for the first time, how interconnected they all were. Her fears had woven her life into theirs. Jane felt not only like a donor, but like a pillar. And just then, the door opened again. This time, it was Sophie, looking fragile but fierce, a spark igniting in her eyes as she graced the room with her presence. Sophie. Jane gasped, trying to sit up, the exhaustion almost forgotten in the rush of joy. Sophie smiled, but it was a weak, wavering thing. I knew you'd come back for me. But before Jane could respond, Sophie's gaze faltered, her expression shifting as if she could sense something lingering in the air. But there's something I need to tell you. A heavy silence fell, laden with an unspoken weight that pulled at Jane's heart. What secrets lay beneath the surface? Jane's breath quickened, fear and anticipation danced within her. What could Sophie possibly reveal? Jane leaned forward, urgency flooding her voice. Sophie, what is it? You can tell me anything. Sophie glanced around the room, her eyes darting to the closed door, as if the walls themselves could betray her. I've been thinking a lot, about life, about maybe not taking things for granted. After the transplant, everything just felt different, like the world opened up in a way I never expected. Jane's heart raced. Each word felt like a delicate thread weaving a tapestry of emotions that connected them tighter than before. What do you mean? Sophie hesitated, her hands trembling slightly in the sheets, and then she finally met Jane's gaze. When I woke up, I could feel the change inside me. It's not just about having a new lease on life. It's about wanting to make a difference, to do something that matters. Jane's brow furrowed in confusion. Sophie, you're not making sense. I mean, after everything. I want to change my life. I want to help others the way you helped me. Her voice grew stronger, filled with resolve. I want to start a foundation. Help kids who are sick, who need hope like I did. The weight of Sophie's words settled in Jane's heart. The audacity of hope was like a warm radiance illuminating the cold reality of a hospital room. It painted a picture of a possibility they had both longed for, yet never imagined was within their grasp. That's incredible, Sophie. But, Sophie continued, her voice barely above a whisper, I want you to help me with it. Jane's breath caught. Me? I'm just a nurse. Exactly. Sophie exclaimed, her eyes sparking with enthusiasm. You understand these kids better than anyone. You've witnessed their struggles. I want you by my side, Jane. We can make a real difference together. The weight of Sophie's hope hung in the air like the flickering light on the monitors. Jane felt an overwhelming rush of emotion. Could she truly be a part of something so grand? I don't know, Sophie. I've just learned to be a part of one life, not a whole movement. But you weren't just a part of my life. You saved it. Don't you see how that transforms everything? Sophie pressed, her voice steady, filled with belief. You have something to offer that goes beyond this hospital. Before Jane could respond, the door creaked open, and a new figure stepped silently into the room. It was Dr. Ramirez again, eyes scanning the atmosphere. How are we doing, team? Dr. Ramirez, Sophie said, her determination unwavering. What if we could start a foundation? Can you help us? The doctor raised an eyebrow, intrigued. That's a big commitment, Sophie. Tell me more about this idea. As Sophie began explaining, Jane felt her heartbeat sink with Sophie's passion. An idea began to bloom in her mind. They could indeed create something beautiful. Something that extended their story far beyond these hospital walls. But just as excitement swelled, a knot of doubt lingered within Jane. She wasn't sure what her future held, let alone what it meant to take on this new role in Sophie's life. What if she failed at it? What if, in trying to help others, she lost sight of herself again? As those questions played in her mind, something else tugged at her heart, a flicker of courage that reminded her of all they had fought through together. What if? Jane whispered to herself. But Sophie, with her fierce purity of intention, had captured her heart. Perhaps this was more than a mere what-if moment. Perhaps it was the beginning of something magnificent. Sophie, Jane started carefully, if we're really going to do this, I want to know one thing: what happens when the world finds out about us? Sophie's expression changed, a flicker of concern crossing her face. Do you think that will change anything? I want you to be a part of my life no matter what. But as Jane opened her mouth to respond, suddenly a crash echoed from the hallway, reverberating through the sterile air of the hospital room, triggering an unexpected surge of panic. Jane's heart raced wildly. What was happening out there? What was that? Sophie grabbed Jane's hand, and a deep silence followed, broken only by their breaths. As they leaned toward the door, an unsettling question loomed larger than before: what chaos awaited them just outside? Jane's heart thudded loudly in her chest as she and Sophie exchanged worried glances. The world outside seemed to pulse with chaos, a sharp contrast to the fragile hope that had filled the air only moments before. Stay here, Jane whispered, her instincts as a nurse kicking in. She released Sophie's hand, but she could see the determination spark in Sophie's eyes. I'm coming with you, Sophie insisted, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. The hospital gown swayed with the movement, a symbol of her defiance against vulnerability. No, Sophie, it could be dangerous. Jane retorted, fear lacing her voice. But Sophie was already on her feet, steadying herself against the bed frame. If something is happening, I'd rather know than hide here. We face things together, remember? Swallowing her protests, Jane nodded. There was a fierce strength in Sophie that inspired her to be brave too. They approached the door inches apart, their feet barely whispering across the floor. With a deep breath, Jane pushed it open. The hallway erupted into a whirlwind of urgency. Nurses dashed past them, faces pale, eyes wide with alarm. A doctor shouted instructions down the corridor, echoing the tension in Jane's heart. They scanned the scene for answers. What is going on? Jane asked a nurse rushing by. Sweat glistened on the nurse's brow as she frantically adjusted her ID badge. Fire alarm on the West Wing. We need to clear everyone out. She shouted, not breaking stride. Jane's breath hitched. The West Wing housed several vulnerable patients. We have to help. Sophie's hand found Jane's. We can do this, together. In that moment, the gravity of their mission transformed from simply starting a foundation to something much more immediate and life-changing. They were caregivers, defenders of life, warriors in scrubs. Let us go, Jane said, adrenaline surging through her body. They rushed toward the nearest nurse's station, where chaos reigned. Are all the kids in the playroom accounted for? Are they safe? Jane asked another nurse whose eyes were frantic. We're doing everything we can. The nurse replied, shaking her head. But the alarms are ringing. Some of the patients in the West Wing still need assistance. Determined, Sophie and Jane exchanged glances. They didn't have time to hesitate. We're going to help, said Sophie, squeezing Jane's hand tighter. They charged down the hallway, urgency molding their every step. The air thickened with tension, and Jane's mind raced through possible scenarios. Stay close, Jane urged Sophie, leading the way through the corridors. As they approached the west wing, smoke began to creep into the air. It swirled like shadows, threatening to engulf their hopes. Jane's throat tightened around despair. "Jane, look!" Sophie pointed toward a window where a group of children wide-eyed and trembling were gathering, drawn to the distance beyond the glass. Fighting back the rising fear, Jane pushed open the door to the first room. A child lay in the bed, oblivious to the alarm, anxiously clutching a stuffed animal. "You have to wake him up," Sophie said, rushing to the child's side. Jane nodded. "Hey, buddy, it's time to wake up." She shook his shoulder gently, her voice steady and calm. Seeing Sophie's courage filled her with strength. Behind them, a siren wailed louder, shaking the walls. The reality of the fire loomed closer. There was urgency in every heartbeat, but they had come too far to retreat now. Just as she lifted the child in her arms, a loud crash sounded, sending a wave of fear through Jane. "What was that?" Sophie gasped, panic etching her face, but Jane focused on the child, trusting her heart would lead them. Then, through the haze of thickening smoke, she squinted. A figure loomed tall against the door frame. A firefighter? "Hold your positions." The voice boomed. "I'll get the kids out." With that, everything could change. Could their bravery truly save lives today? Jane's heart raced once more, filled with fear but also with an unyielding hope. What would happen next, and could they keep the vision of their foundation alive? Amidst the chaos, the firefighter stepped fully into view, his helmet gleaming even in the dim light, and Jane felt a rush of relief. He was here to help, a beacon in the swirling darkness. "Get everyone to the hallway," he commanded, staring directly at Jane and Sophie. "I'll handle the children. Just stay close to the exits." Jane shifted the child in her arms, glancing at Sophie, who nodded, her eyes fierce and unwavering. They dashed back toward the hallway, adrenaline propelling them forward. As they moved, thick smoke churned around them, making it difficult to breathe. Jane held the child tighter, her resolve not to let fear take hold. The child's breath was warm against her chest, a small comfort in the emergence of panic. "Hold on tight," she whispered, urgency wrapping around her words. They rounded a corner, coughing as the acrid smell invaded their lungs. The fire alarm blared incessantly, and every thud of their hearts seemed to echo against the backdrop of chaos. Suddenly, they stopped. A door was ajar, and through it, a small group of children huddled together, frightened and uncertain. Jane's heart tugged. They couldn't leave them behind. "Sophie, we can't," she said, determination igniting within her. "We have to get them." Sophie let out a quick breath, face set with purpose. "You go, I'll back you up. I'll make sure they know we're here." Jane rushed towards the door, her heart hammering. "Hey, kids. You're safe. We're here to help you." Her voice rang out, clear as she tried to soothe their fears. The children huddled closer, some clinging to one another, their expressions wide with fear. Jane knelt down, making sure to soften her voice. "We are getting out of here. You're safe now. Can you help me? We need to get you to the hallway. Can you do that?" One child stepped forward, a little girl with bright red pigtails, her tiny hands trembling. "What about the monsters?" she whispered, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting the smoke to take shape. "There are no monsters here," Jane assured her, heart aching. "Just us and a brave firefighter. He's going to help get us all out. Can you be brave for me?" "I know you can." The little girl nodded, her resolve flickering like a candle flame in the darkness. "Thank you." Jane smiled, feeling the warmth of camaraderie fill the void. "Let us move together." Sophie joined them, taking the girl's hand. "We're all going to be okay. Just follow us." The group moved slowly but steadily. Jane led, Sophie holding hands with the little girl, whispering encouragement to each child who followed. Laughter and chatter emerged, a flicker of joy igniting amidst uncertainty. Suddenly, an immense crash resonated behind them, a wall giving way due to the encroaching fire. Panic seized Jane's heart as the shudder rippled through the ground. "Run!" she called, her voice cutting through the sound of collapsing debris. They sprinted toward the hallway as the smoke thickened, the children's small gasps pushing her harder. Just when they thought they had reached safety, another wave of chaos erupted as flames danced closer. "Can you move a little faster?" Jane urged, glancing back. The faint outline of a firefighter entered her view, his broad shoulders moving swiftly. Her heart surged with hope. In that moment, Jane realized just how much everything mattered right now: the lives they were saving, the dreams they dared to foster, and the foundation that felt so distant now, all of it tied into the lives emerging from the smoke. But just as they reached the safety of the hallway, a scream pierced the air. Jane turned to see Sophie frozen at a threshold, a child grasped in her arms. One look in her eyes showed sheer terror. "Behind us!" Sophie cried out, desperation tore through Jane. They had come too far to let fear win now. What would they face next, and could they save them all before time ran out? Jane's heart raced as she spun around to assess the chaos behind them. The flames roared hungrily, pushing a wave of hot air towards them, and thick smoke curled like tendrils, making everything hard to see. The firefighter's voice rang in her ears like a commandment. "Get out of here! Now!" But how could she leave? Sophie was in danger. "Come on, Sophie. We have to go!" Jane shouted, the urgency cutting through the panic. Sophie's eyes were wide, locked on a child who had slipped from their group, a small boy, barely 6, crawling away from the flames. He was just on the cusp of reaching the safety of the hallway, but the path was growing perilous. "Stay here with them," Sophie ordered, clutching the little girl to her side, as Jane took a step back toward the flames. "I can get him." "Don't be crazy," Jane gasped. "It's too dangerous." But Sophie was already bolting back, her feet pounding against the floor as she lunged toward the boy. "Stop! Come back!" Jane screamed, but her words were lost in the roar of the fire. The boy looked up, his eyes wide and terrified, and froze. Sophie reached out with a steady hand, coaxing him closer. "It's okay. I'm here. Just come to me." With a surge of energy, Jane dashed forward, taking Sophie's place. She scooped the child into her arms just as a piece of ceiling crumbled behind them, showering sparks and debris. "Run!" Jane shouted again, clutching the boy tightly to her chest. The heat singed her skin, but she didn't dare look back. They stumbled forward, the hallway now a blur of shadows and flickering flames. The children's group was only a few feet ahead, but it felt endless. The firefighter emerged out of the murky smoke, his presence like a lifeline. "Keep going. You're almost there," he bellowed, his voice booming yet calm amid the chaos. They reached the doorway, and Jane shoved the boy out before following. The cool air rushed in, bringing a momentary breath of relief, the outside world sharp and clear compared to the suffocating smoke, but Sophie wasn't with them. Panic gripped Jane's heart as she spun around, her eyes frantically searching. "Sophie!" she cried, desperation fueling her voice. "Jane!" Sophie's voice rang from the inferno, now a wavering echo. "I'm stuck." "The door." Jane's stomach knotted. "Hold on. I'm coming." She dashed back, the heat pulling at her. It felt unbearable, painful. But she had to reach her friend. She ducked low into the doorway, feeling the heat almost palpable on her skin like angry, scorching fingers. With her heart pounding, she spotted Sophie trapped, battling against a door that wouldn't budge. Flames lapped at the edges of the frame like a hungry beast. "Push it!" Jane shouted, scrambling closer. "I'm trying." Sophie yelled back, her voice full of fear. "It's locked. Just hold on. I'll break it down." Jane went to kick the door but knew what had to be done. Instead, she leaned her shoulder against it. "Keep pushing," Sophie yelled, sweat drenching her brow. With every ounce of strength she could summon, Jane planted her feet, took a deep breath, and God, it hurt. The door gave a little, creaked, then finally swung open, sending them both tumbling to the ground and into the safety of the hallway. They rolled apart, gasping, laughter bubbling up at their sudden escape from the flames. But the moment was fleeting. It barely had time to settle when crashing noises echoed again, more intense, and the walls began to tremble. "We can't stay here," Jane urged, urgency writing on her voice. "What about the others? The kids?" "Jane." Sophie breathed, her eyes wide, a realization hitting her. "We can't leave them." Their hope was wavering, but it blazed bright. Together, they could still make a difference. But could they handle what came next? "Let us go. We're not done yet," Jane affirmed, her resolve renewed. But as they moved back toward the room of children, the heat behind them escalated. Flames danced closer, taunting them, and the pressure built around them, suffocating every moment. What awaited them in the looming shadows? Would they find the strength to pull everyone to safety before the flames consumed everything in their path? Jane and Sophie sprinted down the hallway, flames flickering ominously behind them. The air was thick and suffocating, each breath a reminder of the heat closing in. They were fueled by desperation, knowing they couldn't leave the children behind. "Here!" Sophie shouted, pointing to a nearby door. "We can check here, maybe they're in this room." Jane nodded, urgency pushing her forward as they barreled through the door. Inside, the smoke was thinner, and they blinked through the haze. The sight before them brought a sense of bittersweet relief, a small group of children huddled together, their faces stained with soot and fear. "Stay calm," Jane called, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We're here to help." The children's eyes darted towards the towering inferno beyond the door, panic creeping back into their small features. "Where's the teacher?" One child whimpered, her voice trembling. Sophie's heart sank, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. "We'll find her. But we need to go now." As she spoke, Jane's gaze caught movement behind the children. A figure emerged from the shadows, holding a girl tightly to her side. It was their teacher, Miss Turner, disheveled but determined. "I thought I'd lost you," she gasped, relief washing over her face as she rushed forward. "And we almost lost you," Jane replied, her heart racing from the mix of fear and relief. "Get the kids together, we have to get out of this place." Miss Turner nodded, her grip firm on the girl. "I tried to keep them calm, but no time for that now." "We move," Sophie interjected. They gathered the children, urging them toward the door, Jane taking the lead. But as they stepped closer to the entrance, the roar of the flames intensified, and a heavy, acrid cloud of smoke enveloped them. The heat seared more than just skin. Fear clawed at their throats. "It's too hot," one of the girls cried, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. "Just hold on to each other," Sophie shouted, powering through the fear. She grabbed Miss Turner's arm and gestured for Jane to take the front. "We've got to stay together. Let us move." They began to inch forward, the intensity of the heat wrapping around them like a cruel embrace. Each step was a battle against the fear gnawing at their hearts. Just as they were about to breach the doorway, a loud crash behind them sent shockwaves through the group. "Run! Now!" Jane's voice sliced through the tension like a knife. They didn't look back as they plunged through the door into the corridor, the children trailing behind like a conga line of fear and determination. But before they could even catch their breath, the building groaned a deep, ominous sound that hinted at the wall's impending collapse. "Out! Get out!" Miss Turner cried, her voice cracking, pushing the children ahead of her. Jane turned, instinctively watching for any signs of danger. "Go, go, go," she urged, the words tumbling from her mouth in a frantic rush. But before they could fully escape the building, the floor beneath them shuddered violently. A wall of flames surged forward, unstoppable and relentless. Panic blazed through Jane as she grabbed one of the girl's hands, yanking her forward even harder. "Stay with us," she shouted, pulling the child closer as they raced for the exit. As they burst out into the open air, the world felt both like sanctuary and chaos. They stumbled into the night, gasping in the cooler air, but hearts racing behind them. The inferno raged with a fury that felt all-encompassing. Sophie fell to her knees, catching her breath. "Did we get everyone?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion and fatigue. Jane scanned the group, counting heads. "I think so, but where's Miss Turner?" Their teacher, still inside, was suddenly a ghost of a thought in their minds, a terrifying void that tugged at their hearts. The realization hit like a punch. "What do we do? We can't leave her," Jane shouted, panic clawing at her throat. Sophie exchanged a determined glance with Jane. "We have to go back." But would they risk their lives again? The flames roared behind them, growing ever more menacing. Would they find the courage to face the flames again, or would they let fear paralyze them? The fire raged behind them, crackling like a beast unleashed. Jane's heart pounded as she locked eyes with Sophie, the determination in their gazes forging a silent agreement. They couldn't leave anyone behind, not now, not after everything they had fought for. "Let's go. We have to help her," Jane shouted, her voice piercing through the chaos. Without hesitation, they dashed back toward the inferno, urgency propelling them forward. The heat pulsed around them, and the smoke pressed in, choking their breaths. "Miss Turner!" they called out, their voices mingling with the roar of flames. Each second stretched like a rubber band, and the heat seemed to flare up, pushing them back. But deeper within their souls, courage swelled. They could feel their bond unbreakable, forged in trials and sacrifice. "We'll find her. Just keep moving," Jane urged, leading the way back through the haze. Inside, the flames danced and flickered, illuminating the dark corners filled with shadows and fear. "We can't waste time," Sophie shouted, taking the lead. They made their way down the hall where they last saw Miss Turner. Sweat dripped down their faces, but every step resonated with the strength of their collective will. Suddenly, they heard a faint cry, muffled by the volume of the chaos around them. "It's coming from here." Jane pointed toward a crumbling door. With a sense of urgency, they pushed against the weight of the flames. "On 3. Jane said, adrenaline surging. 1, 2, 3. They barreled through the door. Inside, the smoke billowed, thick and suffocating. Jane squinted through the haze and caught a glimpse of Miss Turner crumpled against the wall, half-conscious. "We found her!" Sophie yelled, rushing toward her. Jane followed, fear mixing with adrenaline. "Miss Turner! We're here!" Sophie grasped her teacher's arm. "We'll get you out." But the heat bore down on them, a fierce reminder that every second counted. Just a little more time. We can make it," Miss Turner gasped, her breaths shallow. "I can't." The ceiling creaked ominously, and Jane felt a wave of panic rise. "We need to go now," she urged, standing tall despite the chaos swirling around them. With all her strength, she wrapped an arm around Miss Turner, guiding her up to her feet. "I'll help," Sophie shouted, rushing to latch on to Miss Turner's other side. Together, they heaved her toward the door, each step a battle against the fire's hungry embrace. They stumbled out of the room, pushing forward through the dim light as the building rumbled like a living thing. The flames roared, the air thick with despair, but with each laborious step, a flicker of hope illuminated their path. "Almost there," Jane urged, pulling Miss Turner onward, every muscle screaming in protest, heart racing with hope. Just when they reached the exit, a fierce crash echoed behind them. A wall of flames surged toward them, and the world felt like it was collapsing. "Run!" Jane shouted, fear ripping through her. They dashed outside, lungs gasping for fresh air as they fell into the night, tumbling free from the inferno. They hit the ground with a hard thud, and for a fleeting moment, all they felt was relief. The outside world, cool and quiet compared to the chaos inside. Jane took a moment to let the air fill her lungs, each breath liberating them from the weight of smoke. But as she turned to Miss Turner, a wave of despair washed over her. The teacher was barely conscious, skin pale, and emotions crashed over Jane like waves. "She's still with us. Stay awake, please," Jane pleaded, feeling her heart race. The world blurred around them as chaos erupted into cheers and cries for help from the assembled crowd outside. The fire crew moved with purpose, but in that moment, only Miss Turner mattered. "Someone get an ambulance," Sophie shouted, her voice breaking as she knelt beside them, eyes filled with determination and fear. Time felt suspended. Both Jane and Sophie held on to Miss Turner, hearts working as one. "You're safe now, we're all together," Jane murmured soothingly, the warmth of their bond lighting the way through. Their darkest fears, outside, family members gathered, firefighters directing, each moment ticked the clock of hope forward. Just then, amidst the growing crowd, Jane spotted Mia and Ethan, her children. She felt her heart swell with love and hope. With a wave, she called out to them, and they darted forward, arms wide open. "Mom!" they shouted, the relief spilling from their tiny faces like sunshine breaking through the clouds. Jane opened her arms, holding them tight as tears streamed down her face, mixing joy with relief. "I'm okay. We're okay." As the ambulance arrived, Jane felt the warmth of her children's love envelop her. Looking at Sophie and Miss Turner, she knew what they wanted to create together. They weren't just survivors, they were warriors. They had battled flames and fear to save lives, forging a bond stronger than any circumstance could tear apart, and as the paramedics lifted Miss Turner to safety, Jane felt the weight of their intertwined destinies. "Let us build that foundation," she whispered to Sophie, catching her eye. "Let us change lives together," Sophie replied, breathing strength into her words. As they both stood gazing at each other, surrounded by family and community, they knew this was not just a moment of survival, but the genesis of something greater. "Together, we can make a difference," Jane affirmed, her heart beaming with pride and love, and with that, their journey would continue not just as individuals but as a family, their lives forever changed by a fire that had forged a new light in their hearts. This is not just an ending, it's the beginning of a journey, a movement fueled by compassion, sacrifice, and the unwavering belief that hope ignites in the most unexpected places. So, my friends, this is the moment to act. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss our next inspiring story. Love this message? Leave a like right now to feed the algorithm and keep the light shining bright. Comment below with your feelings about this incredible journey and share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to spread the word. Together, we can make a difference.